Good morning. I'm Arlie Schlanger with your daily video update for April 22nd, 2024. Well, as most of you know, on Saturday, the U.S. Congress, the House of Representatives, voted for war, voted for a large package of 4 bills, adding up to almost $100 billion more for the war machine to carry out a futile effort to weaken Russia in the proxy war in Ukraine and to support genocide in Palestine against the Palestinian people. They did this despite polls showing that most Americans don't support these wars. They don't want billions of dollars going to the military-industrial financial complex and the war machine. But Speaker Johnson betrayed his promise to the MAGA faithful that he would not allow these bills to pass, and instead organized for a bipartisan majority to pass them. And therefore, they gave the war machine exactly what it demanded, and nothing in compensation, either on border funding or anything else. Now, I'm going to give you a summary of this from a report filed for the EIR Daily News by my colleague Paul Gallagher. And I will have in the description section a box which you can check if you'd like to subscribe to the EIR Daily News. But here's what Paul wrote, quote, "The U.S. government has gone all out for war. The State Department vetoed a UN Security Council resolution for the state of Palestine's admission to the United Nations, although 140 nations recognize Palestine as a state. The U.S. did this to back Israel's war against the Palestinians. The Congress, meanwhile, voted to issue another $100 billion to the U.S. federal debt to provide more weapons of war to Ukraine, Israel, and Taiwan. And it reauthorized the surveillance without a warrant of Americans. Why with no warrant, no Fourth Amendment? Well, Republican Senator Lindsey Graham said to that question on Fox News Sunday, quote, "We are at war. They're coming to kill us all," unquote. The media resound with praise for Congress, showing responsible bipartisanship for war, and more spending for war. Billionaires who fund the election of these bipartisan warmongers are happy. Now, what Paul then goes on to write about is the justification from Speaker Johnson for this. He said, all of this latest war funding stays here in the United States. He meant that it includes huge outlays to the big weapons producers like Raytheon, Boeing, Lockheed, etc. But as we pointed out on an April 21st editorial in the EIR Daily News, what stays here when the war budget is $1 trillion a year and the annual budget deficit all in all is over $2 trillion? All that debt stays here. On Wall Street, where speculators buy it for derivatives bets that threaten to blow up, and the austerity stays here. Now, that's what you got from the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, who was voted in by the pro-Trump Republicans to replace the compromised Kevin McCarthy as Speaker. Now, one of the things that Johnson said is that what convinced him to change his position on the money for Ukraine was briefings from the intelligence community. They convinced him of the need to fund the Ukraine war to stop Putin. Now, this is the same intelligence community that said Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction. The same intelligence community that said that Putin rigged the 2016 election to make Donald Trump the president. And the same intelligence community that said Ukraine's counteroffensive would succeed. Now, this is the same intelligence community that can't find out who blew up the Nord Stream pipelines. Now, we'll have more news on this story in the coming days, but it's disgraceful that the Congress capitulated like this. And it shows that we need a more forceful effort from the population. Now, The other question that comes up then that we're covering and watching very closely is what effect will this congressional boondoggle have, besides guaranteeing that more Ukrainians will die and we'll be closer to World War II or World War III. So let me quote from the International Monetary Fund's Financial Stability Report of 2024, which says that there are warnings of systemic threats and the increasing volatility and speculative nature of the U.S. Treasury market. This report says hedge funds now control the Treasury futures market. A concentration of vulnerability has been built up, as a handful of highly leveraged funds account for most of the short positions in Treasury futures. And the report goes on to say this could be a systemic threat to the financial stability of the global economy. That's from the International Monetary Fund. Now, I've cited this before, but there was a report in last weekend's Wall Street Journal. America's bonds are getting harder to sell. And let me just report to you the outstanding feature of that article, which was on April 14th. It said that $8.9 trillion in outstanding U.S. Treasury debt has to be rolled over in 2024, nearly $9 trillion, on top of which federal deficits are projected to add $7 trillion more in new debt. So that means the Treasury will be issuing roughly $16 trillion in debt in 1 year into a $26 trillion market. Now, what does that mean? That means interest rates are going to go up in order to get the Treasury sales. But it also means that you're adding the debt, you're going into deeper debt to pay off old debt. That's a prescription for disaster. And that's the course that our country is on because of the idiocy of the Congress in its inability to stand for the American people in order to placate the demands of the military-industrial financial complex. So what I would say is that when your congressman comes to you to plead for your vote in 2024, you have to have the courage to say that the $100 billion for the corporate billionaires and their war machine and nothing for us, and you're coming to us asking for our vote when you've done nothing for us. And that's the message that has to go out to the Congress. Now, this is occurring at the same time where the rest of the world is standing up against Wall Street and the City of London, where we see sovereign nations refuse to knuckle under to the insane demands for loot coming from these corporate cartels. So the question then comes back to the American people. Where will we stand? Will we stand up for our children's future? Or will we fold the way Speaker Johnson did when he capitulated to the demands of the war machine for more, 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 more? $60 billion for the war machine when it comes to Ukraine, and $0 for you in the United States. That's the tally from the vote last Saturday. And it's recognizing that which makes it incumbent upon all of us to make sure we use the next months to ensure that we have a Congress that's not as complicit in genocide and looting as the one that we have right now in Washington.